Welcome to the Crown Room, a room where we have conversations about healing and journeying through this life, navigating through faith, wellness, and lifestyle. In the previous episodes, I've been focusing a lot on my journey through faith fatigue. I've been also focusing on how I've been battling with unforgiveness and selective forgiveness. I've also spoken about how we need to enter this year as honestly and as gently as possible. And now that we've labeled all these seasons that I have been going through, I have been experiencing recently, I then started to be honest to myself. Yes, I'm admitting, yes, I'm acknowledging the fact that I'm arriving honestly and as gently as possible so that I do not lie to myself or I do not put on a facade that I am good. I'm starting on a high. It's time to go. It's 2026. We're starting, and I know that I'm going to crash at a later stage of my life. We've spoken about that in the previous episode, and we've also went through what causes such, right? And as we are navigating into the year, arriving as gently as we can, arriving, carrying the undealt things that we've went through in the previous years, we're carrying things from the previous years, last year, the year before that, and the year before that, and even further down the years. And we've started being in these patterns and cycles where we are up and then suddenly we crash down. We are harnessing relationships that are not healthy for us. We are harnessing habits that are not healthy for us, behaviors that are not healthy for us. And that is one of the contributing factors that I think is what holds us back from living the life that we are actually supposed to be living. The healed life, the life that has direction, and a life that has meaning, because we are constantly in a cycle of healing from what broke you. But do we ever really heal? That's the chat of the day. So during our church service intercession, our one of our pastors talks about the effect that our mind has on us as individuals and how we carry our lives through our mindset. I think it's something that we are familiar with, whether you are Christian or not, whether you are biblical or not. You know that you are what you think, you become what you think, and you become what you carry. As a man thinketh, so is he, right? And I'm still in this season where I want to navigate gently and unwind all of these things that are actually holding me back from living my life to the fullest, from maximizing my life to the fullest. In my prayer, I said, God, what is actually holding me back from, I've labeled these things. I'm going through faith fatigue. I'm battling with selective forgiveness. But what is it that I actually need to do to be able to move past that and be past that? Not in the sense that I've not dealt with it, I've brushed it under the carpet, but I want to face it. How do I face it, and how do I move from it? And I got one word: familiarity. I'm gonna pause and I'm gonna say it again. Familiarity. Ratas Hoa. But I'm really grateful that we have these terms, that we're able to label things that we never knew how, we never knew what they actually mean and what they actually are. Right. And I needed now to meditate on this, on what it means and the impact that familiarity has over my life, the hold that it has over my life. And I think familiarity is one of the biggest contributing factors to holding me back from the life that I actually mean to live or want to live. You have this desire of wanting to be here or be there, but you feel stuck. It's a stagnancy that you don't even understand where it comes from. Okay, so I said let's start firstly with naming the pattern, right? Familiarity is comfort. It comes as comfort. It's the relationships that we're comfortable with, whether they're good or bad. They are not any type of relationship. The relationship that you have with your family, the relationship that you have with yourself, with your friends, with your colleagues, with God in general, right? If you're familiar and if you're comfortable with the type of relationship that you have with a specific person, a specific interaction with certain things, and you've gotten comfortable with that, whether it's good or bad for you. But I want us to shed light on the bad part, because these are the ones that are negatively influencing your life into living your full potential, right? I said it's a relationship that you keep returning to. It's the habit that you keep justifying. It's the mindset that you keep protecting, the version of yourself you keep saying, this is just who I am. Not because it's healthy, but because it's known. And the human heart clings to what it knows, even when what it knows is breaking it. Okay. I've familiarized myself with, in a certain season of my life, I've familiarized myself with living in frustration, living in anger. And if you know me, you know how much I love saying, oh, I'm being rage baited. Now I've become into the cycle where I'm just waiting for someone to rage bait me, or for someone to say something that is gonna piss me off so that I can address it, because who does this person think they are and not want to be addressed? I'm going to address them. I'm not scared of them. And for the longest time of my life, I think I've identified with that it has become my personality, right? But does it really harness peace inside of me if I am constantly calling out people, not in a gentle way, but in a way that is uncomfortable for both me and this person? Yeah, that is familiarity. It has become my identity. I've picked it up. And now, how do I move from that? How do I move from being a person that is always angry, an angry black woman, I like to call myself, to being a lady that is gentle, that is very demure, that knows how to hold people accountable in a more proper manner, than in a more proper approach, or in a more gentle tone than what I actually do? Because I do feel that you do need to hold people accountable if they did something that you don't like, or if they said something that you don't like. But I think there is a way and a manner and approach to it, right? It's just a simple example of one of the things that I've realized that I familiarized myself with. I spoke about faith fatigue, and now I am in the cycle where I'm familiarized with these patterns of not being as devotional, not going to church as often, not reading the word as often, not praising the Lord or worshiping the Lord as often. But now I've become so comfortable in this quietness that I'm in, that I don't know how to move from that. It's now becoming devotional, reading the word, praising, going to church has become unfamiliar. And I feel that, how do I let go of these things that I've clinged onto so long? Okay, let me not get ahead of myself. I then ask myself, why does familiarity feel safer than healing, right? We struggle to let go because familiarity gives us a false sense of control. You feel that you know that these things are predictable. You know how it's going to start. You know how it's going to end. We always say, better the devil you know than the one you don't, because you are scared of, you know what? I think it's a taking a leap of faith, because no, man, I don't know what the other side has for me. I don't know if I try to pursue this new friendship, I don't actually know what is going to happen and what is the outcome. Rather, I stick to this toxic friendship. Rather, I stick to this toxic partner that I know. When you know that is not good, but you struggle to let go. That is familiarity. You know that this is not the person that God has ordained for you. You know that this is the person that God is not aligning for you in terms of having a romantic relationship with them, in terms of a friendship with them. These are the simplest examples that comes to me, because it's things that I've been going through. You know for sure that you're not going to end up married to this person, but you still allow yourself to be in a space that is not good for you, right? We know the cycle, we know the disappointment, we know the recovery. Healing, on the other hand, feels unfamiliar. Being on the other side feels unfamiliar, and unfamiliar feels unsafe. When you've lived in survival for too long, that is what it feels like. So we choose predictable pain over unfamiliar peace. There's a story in the Bible that then came to my heart, and I feel that we are familiar with it. We've heard about it, we've seen it somewhere, whether on the internet, whether through a sermon, whether wherever, right? And if this is your first time hearing this word, I need you to hear it. An example that I got from someone that struggled with familiarity in the Bible is Lot's wife. They were in Sodom and Gomorrah for so long. It was their safe haven, for a lack of a better word. It was their comfort zone. And there came a time when God now rescued Lot and his wife and his children from this toxic setting, right? God gave them an instruction and said, leave and do not look back, right? Leave and do not look back. They left. And Lot's wife did what? Looked back. What did she do when she looked back? She turned into a pillar of salt, right? We know that story, pillar of salt. Do not look back, pillar of salt. And most of the times, if not a lot, we share this word when we talk about what are the consequences of disobedience toward God and what it looks like when you are disobedient when God gives you an instruction. And today I want us to sort of add on to besides the disobedience, because yes, it was disobedience, right? I need us to also look at the fact that and realize it's also about attachment, right? She didn't look back because Sodom was healthy, but she looked back because it was what she was attached to. It was what she known as home. She had already known the things that happens there. It had she knew her way around things. She was comfortable in that zone and she was attached to it. And I'd like to use this um scripture as a mirror. I look at myself as well, that there are things that God has convicted me out of multiple times. Relationships. Some of us have been convicted from going to groups. Some of us may have not. But for some of us who have been convicted out of harnessing certain relationships, some of us have been convicted out of being in a specific mindset. Some of us has been convicted out of the way we speak to people, the way we treat people. The list goes on and on and on and on. For the first 2 weeks, it's all good. You're there. And just like that, you come crashing down like a plane. What is happening? Right? It's the attachment. It's disobedience, yes. But let's look at the attachment. And unfortunately, for most of us, we struggle to we are battling with the attachment more than we are with the disobedience, and ultimately leads us to be disobedient, right? We become then familiar with being disobedient because I don't think I'm ready. You then start saying, oh no, I'll start going to church next year. No, you know what, let me deal with these things first, then I'll make time for God. Oh no, let me start doing this and that. Like, let me play around for a while. Maybe when I hit my 30s, that's when I'll start being serious. But it's things that you've been convicted out of. Oh no, let me have fun, man. YOLO. Chop my youth, live my life. And I just know that, we start thinking that we have control over how we live out our lives. But the honest truth is that we don't, because we don't have tomorrow's promise. And that is what we need to be honest about. We don't know what is going to happen in the next few hours. We don't know what is going to happen in the next few minutes. Attachment, familiarity. It then becomes a trap, right? Sometimes we look back not because we want what hurt us, but because we miss what we knew. We miss the version of ourselves that felt chosen. We miss the comfort of routine. We miss the predictability, even if it came with pain. And just like Lot's wife, we become stuck. Emotionally stuck, spiritually stuck, mentally stuck, and physically stuck. Not because we weren't being led forward, but because our hearts were still behind us. Now that we've named, now that we've labeled, I think it's time for us to go back and reflect. What are the patterns? What are the behaviors? What are the habits? What are the relationships that I'm harnessing, that I've been convicted out of, that I know are not good for me? What do I need to let go of that I'm clinging on to, even though I know that I should have been out of this a long time ago, few years ago? There's still relationships that are harnessed till this day, and I'm going to be honest. There's still relationships till this very day that I'm harnessing, that I know I've been convicted out of. Familiarity has become a trap, and once it has trapped us into our comfort zones, naturally we start identifying with all of these things that we are familiar with or have become comfortable with. Sometimes we don't hold on to things because we love them. We hold on to them because we've built identity around them. And I still go back to this example that I will always call myself a confrontational person. I've started identifying with that, even though I know that my approach is not good when I speak about that. I think of it in a negative light. I always feel the need to call out people. I always feel the need to take offense on behalf of my friends, on behalf of my family. And even when I'm the one in the wrong, because I'm a confrontational person, I don't know how to stand down. I don't know how to admit, and these are the things that affect you as an individual because you're not honest, you're not truthful towards yourself and who you are and who you're trying to become. So I also familiarize myself so much with, I've identified so much around this certain relationship that I have with this person, this certain um, friendship that I have with this person, or this certain colleague, that I start asking myself, who will I be without this person? There was an instance where I've had to let go of a specific person. And I even remember saying, specifically, sending a message to that person saying, I actually don't know. And sometimes you need to be honest with yourself. You don't know what it's going to look like once you've let go of this person. You've built something for so long with this person, and now it's time for you've been convicted out of it. You need to stop being attached to this person, right? And like, I've identified so much that I don't know where to start. I don't know if I should keep you around until I feel like, no, I can't keep you around alone longer. Now, what's coming to my mind is how we always say, oh, go back until you can't anymore. Go back until you can't anymore. Pillar of salt. Pillar of salt. You will turn into a pillar of salt. And now, in the modern times, you won't physically turn into a pillar of salt, but you will be stuck. You will be now navigating through stagnation. And you will wonder and ask yourself now, why am I so stagnant? Oh, I'm so stagnant in my life. Let's look back. Which patterns are you familiar with that are not working for you? It's something as simple as being a lazy person. You want to bag this degree, you want to bag this, you want to make money, you want to let me make an example of money. You see yourself having the financial liberty, but you're so familiar with impulsive spending. It's something that I've realized, that I want financial liberty, but I've become so stagnant to impulsive buying, right? I'll speak about that at a later time during the year. um I've become so familiar with, just living how I want to live. It's money, money comes, money goes. And it's the mindset that I have towards money. I don't respect money. So, how will I experience financial liberty if I'm stagnant in this, if I'm familiar with these patterns that I know are not actually good for my financial health, right? That are not good for my emotional health, that are not good for my mental health. You start asking yourself, who am I without this coping mechanism? Who am I without this old version of myself? Coping mechanisms could be, just the wine of glass a day, just, kotonyana one, or the one it's a 60. It's the littlest, the simplest things, the silliest things that we familiarize ourselves with, and we start identifying with them instead of actually calling them out and moving on to, why is it that it's so easy to build habit out of these things and it's so difficult to move out of it. Now you're realizing that you're having a toxic relationship with alcohol because you're no longer drinking for recreational purposes. You're no longer drinking, just for celebratory reasons. No, you're drinking because you've identified with alcohol in the sense that you drink it when you feel burdened. You've had a long day at work, you've had a long day in life. Oh, you're going through problems. So, you know what? While I'm still waiting for my problems to be solved, let me just drink for a while. Hey, where are you? Let's go. No, no, no. I'm calling myself out and I'm calling you out. I said, who am I without this old version of myself? Letting go doesn't just mean losing something or someone. It often feels like losing who you thought you were, or what you thought that relationship was, or what you thought that habit was, or what you thought that pattern was, that mindset was, you know. But maybe becoming requires loss. Maybe growth requires grief, and maybe freedom requires release. Arriving into a new season, honestly, means asking yourself difficult questions. And while we're still on the line of journaling, we are asking these questions. What am I still holding on to out of familiarity and not alignment? What am I afraid to let go of because I don't know who I'll be without it or them? What am I still looking back at even though I've already been led out of it? Sometimes healing doesn't start with dramatic change, it starts with quiet honesty towards yourself. So, if you are one of those individuals that are struggling to let go, I want you to hear this gently. You're not weak, you're just unlearning what once helped you survive. But just because something feels familiar doesn't mean it's meant to follow you forward. You are allowed to outgrow what once felt like home. You are allowed to choose peace over patterns. You are allowed to walk forward without looking back. Because not everything God delivers you from deserves one last glance, one last drink, one last puff, one last round, one last back shot, one last whatever you've become familiar with, whatever you've identified with. So, another few of the journaling questions that I have is, what am I still looking back at even though I've already outgrown it? What feels familiar but is no longer safe for me? Who am I becoming if I stop returning to old patterns? What part of my life needs honesty before it needs action? Now that we've labeled it, now that we've dissected it, now that we have gained a bit of perspective on it, let this be a pattern that we read into. Let's start reflecting. Make time for yourself because the only person that will stick in your life is yourself. How is your relationship with yourself? What are your thinking habits? Do they benefit you? What relationships are you harnessing with your friends, your family, your community? Are they benefiting you? How do we move forward? Ask yourself, if you were to let go of a certain thing, would you have an attachment to it? Thank you for tuning in, and I'd like to hear from you. Please don't forget to comment, like, share, subscribe. I will see you guys in the next episode, and this is a goodbye from me to you. Love you.